everyone, and welcome to the Metaverse. It's so fantastic to be sharing this panel with such an excellent array of speakers for this Game On Summit. So today we're going to be talking about digital innovation and blockchain in art, music and entertainment. So my name's Dr. Jane Thomason and I'm going to be the moderator for the panel, and I'm really delighted to welcome the panelists, Kenji Claudio from NFT Blue, Karena Belin from WHub and AngelHub, Angie from Forkast.News, and James Lim from Gameberry. So let me just give you a brief opportunity to quickly tell everyone who you are and what you do. So Kenji, can we start with you?
Sure. My background traditionally is in blockchain, separate from NFTs. I did a lot of investor relations in Asia. I believe I've met Karena before in Hong Kong, and I think I've been to Gameberry's office, James, as well, with BLOCORE. So I've visited a few of the people in this room, and I transitioned into the NFT space because a lot of what we do specifically is work in the entertainment space. Before I came into blockchain, I was in the entertainment space in Hollywood as a producer. We produced content for Fox Sports Asia, Fox Sports, and we had a lot of the clients that we had in entertainment that wanted to get monetization in some way or get their foot in the door into blockchain. So that's in a nutshell how we got into the space, and we bring our core competency of media and entertainment into the blockchain and NFT world.
Thanks, Kenji. So great that you know many people on the panel. Karena, a quick introduction from you.
Yes, thank you very much. Great to be here with a lot of good friends indeed. So WHub is the largest startup community platform, power connector and ecosystem accelerator here, headquartered out of Hong Kong. We have 500 partners around the world, and with that, help startups connect to the resources they need, be it recruiting, do a corporate startup co-innovation programs, run a full-fledged conference, which is the core event of the Start Me Up Hong Kong Festival. And the sister platform, AngelHub, is the very first and only SFC regulated startup investment platform for professional investors and growth stage companies scaling here in Asia. And we have a fund that also co-invests along the platform. And with that, we're very happy investors in Animoca Brands and the Sandbox. And I think that brings me also here to this panel to talk about blockchain and how it potentially changes the gaming, art, and the entertainment business.
Thank you so much, Angie. Wonderful to see you. Let's hear a little bit from you.
It's great to see you, Jane, and everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Angie Lau. I'm a longtime broadcast veteran, journalist, and I have found myself as a journalist covering one of the most, in fact, the most exciting story, in my opinion, of our age, of our modern age, and that is blockchain, crypto, digital assets, and all of the emerging technologies that are really shifting how we are engaging with society, with each other, within industries. I founded Forkast.News 3 years ago. We currently are going gangbusters only because the space that we knew was the story. Everybody is discovering it right now. And this panel and this summit is testament to that. Forkast.News covers emerging technologies, blockchain at the intersection of business, politics, and economy. We cover it in language that anyone can understand. And most critically, we cover it with the knowledge that it is changing how we are engaging with each other. And it is imperative that we all understand what the technology is about as a tool for us humans to figure out how to elevate our experience here. So that's Forkast.News in a nutshell. Happy to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Angie. And that whole issue of how we're communicating with each other we'll come back to. But James, a quick introduction from you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. This is James from BLOCORE. BLOCORE is a Seoul-based venture capital and strong believer in the value proposition of blockchain. And so far, we've been invested into more than 50 innovative blockchain companies, such as the Sandbox and Animoca Brands, Clayton. And our previous focus was the gaming vertical, since we believe the value that blockchain can provide in the gaming vertical. And now we started to actively invest into art and entertainment as well. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm so looking forward to the discussion, and what an exciting time that we're in with the explosion of DeFi and NFTs and play to earn games and the metaverse kind of taking over our universe. It's just an extraordinary time to be living through. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from each of you. And just as a start, because we're talking about blockchain with art and music and entertainment. So from your perspective, how is blockchain and digital innovation changing art, music, and entertainment? So Kenji, let's start with you.
I see a lot of conversations from whether it's firsthand with myself or from my colleagues. They're trying to figure out the utility connection from how do we bridge the digital to the physical world. And I've seen some pretty cool ideas on the music side where fan engagement is considered with tickets, treatability, value. And when I say value is what's the secondary market look like if I have an NFT? If I trade that, if I buy that from a Taylor Swift or another famous artist that I follow, what's the utility behind that? And so I see a lot of cool answers to that question as well. Some of the artists that we work with, we've done physical art galleries with NFTs. We were at Bitcoin Miami, and we brought some of our artists from Los Angeles down, and we were able to do a lot of introductions to a lot of the whales in the NFT space to help empower artists to sell their art, one, and also engage with the buyers in a physical world. So that's from at least our personal standpoint at NFT Blue is we try to help bridge that gap for a lot of artists that don't know about the NFT space or don't know how to bridge that by themselves. So we do a lot of handholding. But a lot of the people that we work with, we've talked with Universal Music Publishing Group. We've talked with a lot of the big protocols that do a lot of the actual launches of the NFTs. A lot of the questions that they ask is how do we add the utility beyond just selling an NFT as itself to help, I guess, bridge a use case for the industry.
Yeah, and it is very formative. So that's an important question. Karena, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think there are three aspects or elements I think that are interesting to highlight. One is from a perspective of the entire value chain in the different industry verticals that you were mentioning. And again, if we think about what blockchain and NFTs arguably really enable is on the one hand side really truly digital ownership, right? Before things that were on the internet, they were copyable, they were not non-fungible. And with that digital ownership, really the ability to capture value in terms of really digital asset and an investment, but also, being able to capture the yield, right? The usage and monetizing that. And I think what is really interesting with that is it shifts back the monetization powers really to those who are the original creators and, owners of that value. And you talked about, the evolution from pay to play to free to play and freemium models to now play to earn, which brings me to the second point. I think what is really interesting to highlight is then the change in consumer profile, right? Be it gaming or be it art. So obviously we see a shift towards younger generations, those that are more digital savvy to start with, but even also in terms of change of consumer profile, and that's where it's a little bit the perfect storm with the COVID situation and everything. But look what happened with Axie Infinity in the Philippines, right? Where now actually you can make a living out of playing games, and that really definitely changes the profile. And then even just to take an example from the art industry, the third point is kind of like the definition of what we're actually looking at in this industry and in the art industry, the definition of art, right? So digital art now really becomes a thing. And I think that's really interesting to see, or even, generative art start, being things that are able to be captured as an investment class, right? And I think that is really thrilling because obviously also as an investor, you look into things that are really game changing from an overall dynamic in the industry.
Yeah, thank you. And Angie, you talked about changes in the whole way that we interact. So tell me what you think are the big changes that we're seeing with this.
No, yeah, just to follow up on what Karena was saying, it's a cultural moment, I think, what we're experiencing right now, the zeitgeist of the time. Since 2008, with the global financial crisis, you have an entire generation, the millennials, the Gen Zs that are coming up behind, that for the first time is not participating in that social climb. That social ladder is not allowing the next generation to do better than their parents. This is a real moment that's not only happening in North America, but that has been the case in Asia. I mean, just take a look at, people's perspective on real estate ownership. It's nearly impossible for most generations. Real estate is inherited. And so you have this moment of disenfranchisement of a traditional system, right? And then at the same time, you have an entire generation that has grown up only on the digital space. And so how would it not make sense that when we talk about what we value, what we experience, what we engage with in the metaverse, that COVID has simply accelerated that, not only for these generations, but across generations? This is the moment that we are seeing really bubble up for NFTs and the kind of technologies that allow us to engage with each other culturally. So, everybody was talking about Jack Dorsey's first tweet, and he was auctioning that off as an NFT. But if you think about it, how different is that from if you go into a museum and you're staring at an ancient urn that was dug up, or an ancient arrowhead that somebody, that an archaeologist, that represented the evolution of civilization, of human experience on Earth. That is a moment that triggered what was a cultural shift in social media, how we engage with each other. So how does that not make sense? And so what's super exciting is that what we're doing with technology tools, as a media person watching this unfold, covering the story, but also as a publisher, to actually see, for the first time, we can actually use these technologies to leapfrog against a traditional system that doesn't make sense anymore. I've always said, Jane, and I think I've even said it to you before in our conversations before COVID, right, in the real world, that media, the construct of traditional legacy media, is from the Industrial Revolution. It's from the printing press. It is from that kind of top down, the printing press, and then publishing out. Technology allows us to leapfrog all of that and engage with the audience directly. That's enormously exciting. And to apply blockchain, to apply NFT thinking to that is only going to make this space even more exciting.
Thanks, Angie. It's almost overwhelming, isn't it? The sort of scope and extent and the possibilities in the change and the pace with which it's happening. James, what's your perspective on this?
Traditionally, in the art and entertainment business, I think publishers as middlemen played a huge role in connecting creators with users. But however, there lies a problem that both creators and users had to rely on the business decision solely made by the middlemen. I believe that blockchain can solve that risk and can be the next model of art publisher in 2 dimensions. So first, blockchain is set by protocol, not by a limited number of board committees. As a protocol-based service, the decision-making process will be done in a transparent manner, with every stakeholder included. We believe that the publishing platforms will eventually be owned by the creators and users. And second, blockchain opens a whole new market for digital artists. Traditionally, digital artists lacked channels to monetize their artworks. However, blockchain secures the originality of digital artworks in the form of NFTs. This opens a new market for digital artists, and I think blockchain will act as a new publishing tool for the digital art market that was not available in the past.
Yeah, thanks, James. And there's quite a few important points that we want to catch up on. But one that you mentioned was that you're seeing the future as these platforms will be owned by the creators and the users. And the other one, Angie, I want to come back to you because this is this issue about how blockchain can verify the sources of the news that you use. But just before we do, because NFTs is this hot thing that's on everyone's lips. And ever since Beeple sold his artwork for 69 million through Sotheby's, it's got a lot of people terribly excited. Lots of people are just saying this is some sort of monumental bubble that's going to burst. So maybe if I can just start with Kenji and Karena and get your views. Is this a bubble? Is it going to burst? Where is this going?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think for the health of the industry, I think there is a bubble that needs to burst, I think, pretty soon. I think there is a lot of market making with good faith, but I think the market really needs to identify what is the value within the NFT space that we're going to double down on. I've seen so many iterations, and like we've discussed, Jane, that there's a lot of early stage development right now of kind of us trying to identify what is the value that from an adoption standpoint that we all, I think, from a consensus would agree upon that this is valuable. This is what we can bridge the digital and the real world tangible value type of assignment to the NFT space. And so I think there's a lot of iterations of NFTs that don't bring value to the space. And I think that bubble should burst. At the same time, there's certain iterations, I think, of the NFT space that won't be bursting anytime soon. I think there's a lot of unique things that I've run across with assigning, for example, sneakers, like the secondary market with sneakers or fine wine. People are using NFTs as a way to, attach that to a physical item, and you can trade those items at scale. There's certain things where I've seen those types of iterations of use cases that's not going to burst anytime soon. I think that's only going to get bigger, just like how Bitcoin has gotten bigger since its origins. I think we're in the very early stages that the right projects and the right use cases will not burst, but the wrong ones probably will.
Thanks. And Karena, maybe you can give us a perspective from the way that you see it. It seems like it's experimental and there's some really sound prospects and there's some that, as Kenji said, should burst.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me first correct you. Actually, it was sold off at Christie's. So actually, the leading auction house in digital art is Christie's, not Sotheby's. But I mean, the thing is, when we talk about bubble, and it's interesting because Kenji mentioned obviously not only NFTs but cryptocurrencies, and certainly yes, I agree. There is a speculative element to it, right? And some of it actually are looking into making short-term gains with that speculative aspect that we see. But I think the reason why people talk about a bubble right now is because of that huge exponential growth, because it was just so fast, right? I mean, if we look even in terms of ownership of NFTs, I guess 1 or 2 years back, we had like several 100,000 people. Now we have probably alone in the US, I think we say 4 million, let's say 10 million, NFT owners in the world. I think that's actually still super, super small, right? And even if you make the linkage to cryptocurrencies, people, if you go back to the real utility and the usage, right, and the value that it provides, I think we're actually just at the beginning. Yes, right now we're in this perfect storm. And again, we talked about the fact that the trust in digital assets, services has significantly increased. The consumption pattern has totally changed because of COVID. So many things went online, even the way we work now. And with that, we have seen this once of a sudden explosion. I do agree, in some certain areas, there will also further be art and regulation, particularly in the art industry, on defining what really has value, right? Is it, is the people really worth 69 million or more or less? But overall, again, stepping back, I think we're actually just at the beginning. So again, if you think about the value that it provides and the current usage that we see in the space, we're hardly even at mass adoption. And I think what is really interesting with the true believers at the very early beginning, even if we step back in terms of blockchain, the philosophy, right, the decentralization aspect, the internet of value, where people say, we will see the Kodak moment of big tech. We're just at the beginning, arguably. So yes, if you're in it a little bit more in the short term, you have to be careful. You can lose a lot of money. But I think if you're in it for the long run, and that holds true for NFT as much as it holds true for Bitcoin, and I'm convinced if you go back, there's super interesting posts out there in terms of back to the fundamentals of, again, offer and demand. I think there's so much more potential in there. So we're pretty bullish in the space.
Yeah, thanks very much. They're really interesting perspectives. And I think all of us share the enthusiasm, but, a little bit of trepidation as the experimentation's going on. So, Angie, just taking a step back to media and news, and obviously with the pandemic and so many things happening around the world, like Afghanistan and so forth, trying to really understand what is the truth, what are the facts, is very difficult for everyone. So fake news is just a huge issue. Can you comment a little bit about how blockchain can be used to help us, filter through the morass of information that comes towards us and understand what's real and what's not?
Yeah, I'm excited about the potential of the technology, and I'm sad to say that it's not necessarily all there yet. The exciting part is that everyone is working on it, and there's no doubt that that is accelerating. But I mean, Forkast.News was born actually out of this question that you've asked, which is, how can blockchain help resolve the enormous issues that we're experiencing in media right now? Fake news, fake, like questionable sources, questionable stories that are going viral. And it was actually the exploration of this technology that led to Forkast as a coverage space, as a publisher in the space, recognizing that there's not enough credible coverage of this startup industry. As a technology, there is enormous value to blockchain, good and bad. The exciting part is that it is a smart ledger, smart contracts. So there is a functionality there that can allow publishers to engage directly with an audience economically. That is extremely important. On the content side, blockchain can also, because of its transparency and immutability and a record that is seamless, frictionless, and is of permanent record, that there is enormous potential of blockchain to essentially record these moments of news in time for all the world to see. Now, we have a garbage in, garbage out problem. That's essentially the problem that everybody is still really struggling with, and not just in media, but just across industries. You can even see with the food supply chain, it is the quality of the information that goes into the blockchain as it's recorded with a degree of permanence that, that it's not the technology itself, it's can you trust the content itself. And so that is a question that the industry, that our profession needs to still overcome. But there's various ways to do so that also include AI and blockchain and the merge of all of these things. I'll tell you that a pilot project that we worked with Accor, Jim Nasser and I were talking about, just how they were using blockchain for patient information in the medical industry. And we were just riffing. And I said, there is absolute application here in journalism and in content. And we worked on a little pilot project together. It's called News Hash, and their team essentially authenticates the source. So it's coming from Forkast. You know that it comes from Forkast. You know that the original source is our sources. You know that we are the original writers of this piece. But what it also allows the audience to understand as it permeates throughout the internet, it's shared, it goes viral, there's derivatives of our work, et cetera, that it goes back down to the authentication and verification of the original source. That is super, super important in our media age. We see derivatives of original content and reporting all the time. Sometimes those derivatives are true and real, which speaks to the credibility. This is still very much a reputational space, but sometimes those derivatives take hints of the truth, spins it, and then pushes forward a false narrative. That's when it goes viral. That's what we're seeing spread across with some virality in social media. We've seen it in politics, and that is really the frustrating thing. It is a marriage between how can we use all of the skills of media literacy and actually embed into blockchain. I think that is actually the magic sauce that we all are working towards in the future. But absolutely, blockchain is now giving us those tools to actually think about it, to return authenticity and verification to content and restore credibility to a profession that I've given my entire life to. Because without the truth of knowledge, we cannot be empowered to act. And worse yet, if we are acting on a false narrative or false information, that's even worse. So that struggle and tension exists, but I'm truly excited about a lot of stuff that we're seeing in the publication space. A lot of mainstream publishers, including New York Times and Adobe, working on things, Twitter, and then also independently, so many projects in the blockchain space, Filecoin Foundation, for example, Internet Archive, all of these things where we are decentralizing, thinking about how we're going to use decentralization to restore faith in content. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. It is so exciting and great to see. So, James, let me just come to you and just come back to the basics. Like those artists and those musicians, how can blockchain actually help them get a better deal? What does it do for them? We've heard about NFTs, everyone's got one, but I'm a struggling artist. What's it going to do for me? James?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So when a traditional artwork is traded in the secondary market, artist or the artist family get zero loyalty from secondary sale. Plus, when the artwork is traded in the primary market, artists only get 50% of the sale price, with the rest allocated to art galleries. However, this is not the default status in the NFT industry. There is a common sentiment in the crypto community that more should be rewarded to the artists. We also believe that this will ultimately enrich the creativity of our society. With a strong vision of the future, we are actively bringing traditional art players to this new trend. We are currently collaborating with Gallery Hyundai, which is South Korea's #1 art gallery, to build an art NFT platform that will provide a better reward system and a new market for both traditional and digital artists.
Thanks. And, Kenji, how is it helping build stronger and more connected communities for musicians and entertainers? And I think it was you or one of you were talking about connecting fans. How can this build those sorts of communities?
Yeah, I think that's a question that we wrestle with at NFT Blue. And I don't think all the answers is just digital in a vacuum. And so I think what we did practically with using a physical art gallery to display NFTs is we built our own private network of buyers that really do fully support the NFT space, the growth. They're very bullish, and they also want to support young artists. So we found a lot of philanthropic buyers in Miami that visited our art gallery, and we were able to help those artists that really, one, probably have never sold a traditional piece of art in a gallery, and two, let alone an NFT, have the gallery space to actually talk with buyers. We were able to introduce them with people that buy traditional art, but maybe perhaps have never even bought any digital art in the NFT space. And so it was a fun exercise for both sides, where maybe there's not a lot of blockchain literate people that we might encounter, but we help bridge and educate on both sides, on the buyer and the seller side, to help, on a physical level, buy digital assets in the NFT space. So I think, I think that's one way from our standpoint how we try to help the community with that.
Oh, look, thanks so much. I feel like this panel is a tasting platter. we're just able to have one little morsel from all of these amazing things that are whole panels in themselves. So, Karena, I need to come to you on the metaverse. We've heard about the metaverse before and this sort of merger between the digital and the physical. So tell me about how the metaverse is kind of expanding our traditional concepts of entertainment.
Yeah, and I think it's always a very interesting discussion, and I kind of like to throw it back with the question in terms of how much do we actually realize that our current physical world is already digital? I mean, I think one of the things that we can see is really very smoothly our own, again, consumption patterns, even in our daily lives and our intrinsicies with the digital environment. Once again, obviously really accelerated through the current pandemic we're going through is really, really interesting. And I think what the metaverse and particularly the let's say the gaming universe actually has shown us is that at the end of the day, the value of being able to create, own, exchange, trade is now in the digital world as much possible as we used to do it in the physical world, right? So again, the concept of something being unique, right? I mean, right now I'm holding a case of my AirPods, right? And obviously I can write something on it, and it exists only once. As soon, I mean, you have tons of these, right? But as soon as I don't know, engrave something, it becomes a unique piece, right? And in the physical world, obviously, this is something now that I can start, selling and handing over. And again, I think realizing that blockchain now allows to create this ownership and to make something really unique is really where you have an intrinsic utility, which, once again, coming back to the conversation we had before, right, goes beyond the speculative, the pure, kind of like fluff that people are worried is intrinsically in there. And I think what is really interesting, I meant that in my first answer to the question about the type of consumers that we see now having access and becoming, main actors in the entire industry are really changing. So if we all, have seen Roblox and the success story of it, and now being able to multiply that and even increase the value of it, because if it is blockchain enabled, once again, it makes it non-fungible. It makes it, true and realizable for the owners. That's really, really interesting. And I think the second aspect is once again, to that whole power of decentralization, is it is a peer-to-peer community, right? And you will see a lot of discussion actually going on in terms of open metaverses versus closed metaverses. And I mean, in the people in the industry has been very, very surprised and look interestingly at statements from Facebook or others where they want to, get into the metaverse, where you're like, yes, but the whole power is that it was peer-to-peer created, right? And it is an open universe that is so powerful. And I think with that moving forward, I think in the long run, it will be that community that will really see and be the ones on the forefront. And so I don't really think that people who try to come in and kind of like leverage that in again creating kind of like closed universes really will win in the long run. But again, coming back to, I mean, how much is the metaverse a concept that is really strange and not well understood? Again, 2 years ago, you would have asked people about digital assets and the value of digital assets. Was really strange. The young consumer group, anyway, it's very, very normal for them. But now even, more traditional users, we again, in this new environment, are on an automatic, I would say, transition into understanding actually what a digital universe is and being excited about owning the land next to Madonna in the metaverse, right? So now this is possible, and we start grasping it, even the older generation now. So I think it's a really interesting time, and once again, a few years back, nobody would have said it's happening so quickly. I remember talking to Mick, I think 2 years back at our conference, and when he said that CryptoKitties was actually a first attempt to make blockchain mainstream, right? And I think it was actually great and created some buzz. But now it happens so much faster and so much more naturally, I would argue.
Yeah, it's almost unbelievable from the first of the CryptoKitties to now. But these distributed autonomous communities of gamers, or the distributed autonomous metaverse owned by the players and by the designers, I mean, it's with us now, and we're seeing what this can become. So tragically, we've only got about 5 minutes left to finish. So I want to go to each of you and give you 1 or 2 minutes just to give the audience your key takeaways. Is gaming the path to mass adoption? What are we going to see in the future? What do you want them to remember from what you know about this incredibly exciting period in time? So Kenji, you've got to catch a plane. I'm going to let you go first in case you want to run.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jane. I think that gaming has always been the road to mass adoption. I think what we've seen in the blockchain space initially with even with Brock Pierce in 2004, 2005 with RuneScape, when he created the first secondary market for digital, in-game gold. We saw that's how, I guess, the gamification of mining started in the digital space. And I think the same would be the case with NFTs as we see with Axiom. And, if Pokemon Go does the same thing, I think we're in a dangerous place for adoption here. So I think there's definitely a very obvious path to mass adoption. And we're also seeing other iterations of adoption, hopefully in the art space and many other plays that I see in this space. But I hope in terms of one takeaway for the audience, I don't think NFTs are going anywhere. They're here to stay.
Thank you, Kenji. James, what's your takeaway?
When we look at what is happening at the NFT space, it is not just the artistic value that makes current the NFT valuable as of now. Instead, it is the identity is important. People are willing to pay huge bucks to earn a non-replaceable, non-fungible identity. And as multiple metaverses are to come in the near future, people will need multiple identities to use at the metaverse. Our thesis is that this digital identity will come in the form of NFTs.
Interesting. Thanks, James. Karena, what are your takeaways?
Well, a lot of takeaways. I actually wanted to kind of change a little bit the rules of the game, or answer to a different question, which haven't touched on yet, which is, I think, what is really interesting is if we look into industries and value creation, is very often the entire ecosystem around. And I think one of the things that is still yet to come is, beyond just the creation of, for example, art or digital assets, is all the infrastructure around it. So, providers who will allow you to create platforms that will allow you to trade and create more liquidity, platforms that provide know-how and information. I mean, Angie is in that space, right? So again, I think there are a lot of stakeholders who start realizing that this is now a thing that is here to stay, and that there, additional service providers that will be able to hop on the bandwagon, obviously further drive adoption, but also from that, be able to monetize and take a part of the pie. So I think that is a very, very interesting space. And I think where a lot of also investors are looking into who are these players, what are the type of services that in that entire infrastructure of building an even bigger ecosystem will be.
No, really important point. So Angie, last word is up to you. What would you like to remind our audience?
Is just to reinforce that there is elegance in the space between chaos. And that's where we are right now. And in that space, is where all of you reside, both in the audience and on this panel. It's finding those opportunities that we from the traditional looking into the future can arbitrage, can leverage. It's the ecosystem space that Karena talks about, which is not just looking at the artists or the functionality of the NFT itself, but who is serving that space, who's building the services that space also requires. Is it, you know, the journalists, the content observers poking holes at it and asking the important questions? Is it somebody else taking a look at the marketplace and providing, you know, spot prices for NFTs, you know, for a non-fungible token, but essentially trying to figure out what the market realities are. But ultimately, I think it really is about what the future holds in this space. There's just a lot of exciting things. There's just as well, equally, a lot of dangerous things. I think that we can't apply the optimism that we have for the technology and disregard what the danger flags are, where people are also looking at that arbitrage leverage space and thinking, you know, very poorly about it, and you know, trying to you know, hurt and take advantage. So it really is, I think, up to all of us to, you know, thanks to you, Jane, for this incredible panel and the summit, and all of you, to just consume as much as possible, but always recognize that technology can empower and it can also disenfranchise. And you have to decide the responsibility that you have, not only for yourself, but for the community at large. But what I'm really super excited about and optimistic about is that blockchain with smart contracts, with smart governance, can actually help us all democratize and bring power to our voices. So it's exciting times, Jane. May we live in interesting times, and here we are.
Look, it's so exciting, and I really am glad that you finished on that note, because I think that's such a tremendously important note, because as you say, there are risks, there are bad actors, but at the same time, with just a mobile phone, nearly everyone in the world can have access to what blockchains can bring to art, to entertainment, to entertainers who haven't had a voice and haven't had a fair deal before. And it can build a community around these things where everyone can participate. So in the end, the potential for this to do good and to impact on social transformation and make people's lives better, as Axie Infinity has done in a number of developing countries during the pandemic, that's the power for me. And I think it's up to influencers like us to use our voice to send those messages and to encourage people to think about how to embrace this for social transformation. So it's been an absolutely incredible panel. Thank you to all of you. It's such a pleasure to have moderated it. I know people will enjoy it, and it's only the beginning. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.